Hi, class. This is going to continue our lesson on IT security as Maris closed up shop today due to our storm. I want to take the time to wish you good luck on your exam, wish you a great spring break, and remind you that the quiz is due this evening. I'll be entering midterm grades tomorrow, so you'll be able to see those probably before you leave campus. So let's share our slides and off we go. There's going to be an assignment on the lesson here. I'm just going to embed a question probably halfway through this lecture, and you'll have to go into the assignments tab and put in the answer to that question, and that'll really show that you've seen the rest of class. All right, so here we go. So we left off looking at denial of service attacks, spam, and computer crime. We talked already about phishing. That's where we had the instance where Wells Fargo Online was trying to contact me through email. And evil twin is it's two ways to look at it. It's a carbon copy of a network, or it's sometimes used to look at a website that's supposed to be one thing and not another. We got into a bit that me, the IT guy, is the most likely to be a security threat in an organization. Though all employees can be a threat because we know the organization, we have inside knowledge. The IT guy is going to know that we have poor security procedures and realize that both end users and our IT people are sources of risk. We've seen in the video we presented that all systems are inherently going to come with bugs. And it's because we really can't take the cost of having zero defect applications. They're just too big, too complex, and we need to get them to market as fast as we can. So we're okay with bugs. But what happens with those bugs or vulnerabilities is that intruders prey on those flaws, and then that's what opens us up to problems. Especially users with Microsoft Windows or iPhones, we're continually getting software updates, and oftentimes we don't do them. It's very important to do them in that they fix a lot of these bugs and make it harder for an intruder to attack us. And that's what patches are at the bottom of the screen here. So what value can we place on security and control? We really have to realize that failed computer systems can cause a loss of our business. When I was at Syncor, I talked to you guys already about our denial of service attack that pretty much shut us down for 4 days. Look at what 9/11 did to companies. That event pretty much killed the dot-com phase of the early 2000s because firms couldn't recover from a disaster. Syncor couldn't recover from an attack. We lost either our business itself or our stock value plummets, all because we don't have access to our data. And now we're even more vulnerable because, say, medical professionals like me at Greystone, we're storing so much. We're storing individual Social Security numbers. We're storing their PHIs, their privileged health information. Finance companies are sharing financial data. All companies have trade secrets. Can you imagine the stock value should the original recipe for Coca-Cola be stolen? Coke would pretty much be out of business. We talked about these laws already. HIPAA protects PHI. Sarbanes-Oxley shows us that we're managing financial information properly, and Graham-Leach goes into security and confidentiality of our customer data. There is I'm not going to say new, it's been around for 10 or 15 years now, but a branch of IT that really does what's called forensics. Much like your CSI, this and that, forensics is where we dig deep into evidence or data to find a root cause. This happens a lot in lawsuits among two entities, white-collar crimes, things like that, because we're storing data. We have email systems, vaulted email systems, or data warehouses of email. We have file servers. We have our application servers, our database servers, all sources of evidence. Well, computer forensics people will put tools in place on our devices upon legal request based on search keywords. So this is where the indexing comes into play when we looked at databases or even our emails, and they run searches on these keywords, and they're able to take the results of those keyword hits, analyze them in the lab, and present them to opposing legal counsel to build a case against us per se. Great field to get into. High demand, high visibility, high pay. Our controls on our information systems can be automated or manual. Oftentimes we want automated controls so we don't have to think of them. Back when I took over Sarbanes-Oxley compliance with Syncora, our controls were manual. We had to write them, we had to test them, we had to audit them, we had to remediate them, and then we had to do it all over again. And we had to watchdog our people because they were trying to fake the test or fake the results, because we don't want to be burdened with having to follow rules, follow policy and procedure. Quite a hard job to do in watchdogging controls. Risk assessment. I wish we were doing this in class because I typically use an example of the lottery. I buy a scratch-off ticket once a month. And we know scratch-offs come in increments of 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. Well, the dollar one, we typically can win maybe $20 at most. We hope to break even. We call that low risk, low return. That's a risk that we're never really going to deal with because it has no value to us. Same thing with the $2 and $3 ones. We kind of hope to lose only $2 or $3. We can make $2 to say $20, $30. Why bother? The $5 one is where we may have medium risk and medium reward. $5, hope to get $50, $100 maybe. Hope to break even. Not really worried too much about losing $5. The 10, 20, 25, and 30 are what we call high risk, and they could have high reward because their payouts are much different. So the first part of our question is for your assignment, which dollar value do I typically buy each month of scratch-offs? Well, I buy the $30 one. It's high risk, high reward. I can handle losing $30 should I lose, but my gains could be that much greater. In the past year that I started this and really do it just for fun and now out of routine, I've won almost $1,500. So pretty good reward. I've lost more than I've won, however, but the wins are big. But in IT, we look at risk assessment by the type of threat, the probability that it will happen, our potential losses of that threat, and our expected annual loss. So it kind of looks like this. We have a 30% chance of a power failure. We could lose between $5,000 and $200,000. The value we put on that threat is $102,000. And we can see the expected loss. With that 30% chance of occurrence with the expected loss, etc., we're not going to take that risk and we're going to put in redundant power supplies. 5% chance of embezzlement with the low value threat, low expected loss, and we're going to be okay if our employees should try to steal with us. However, even though user errors has low expected losses and value of the threat is low, the probability of it happening is so high that we're going to do whatever we can to prevent user error. Security policy, we've seen different policies already. They're really ranking our risk, identify our security goals, anyone helping us, how we're going to achieve those goals. It comes with an acceptable use policy. It shows how our firm, our college, etc., tells us how we can use our computing equipment. I will upload one into resources today that I wrote for Greystone, so you can see what one looks like. It shows how you have to protect your devices, what website you can go to. We put a statement in that we expect you to spend 5 to 10% of your time proofing off on the computer, but realize that the systems are for business processing only. We look at identity management. That's that Active Directory we've talked about, or the identity service we've talked about. It's how we get our Marist IDs. It lets us identify valid users. We give access to what things that you as a user should get, and it is a place where we can delete users as well. And here's what a security access policy looks like for a personnel system. Disaster recovery and business continuity are terms that are used interchangeably, even though they're vastly different. Disaster recovery is a process of safeguarding our data in that we replicate data from one data center to another to assure availability. Disaster recovery planning really didn't happen wholeheartedly until after the 9/11 tragedy. As a result of 9/11, companies realized if we don't have an alternate means to see our data, we're going to go out of business. At Greystone, we have our primary data center in Chicago and our backup data center in Phoenix. And we do constant between those two sites. We had a DR test in which we cut all the connections to all our locations, 17 at home, and they automatically failed over to Phoenix, and we were able to use all the applications and see our data was whole. That's the point. If we lose a data center, we want to be able to work as quickly as possible. And this was a 5-minute switch over, so it's pretty quick. Business continuity, on the other hand, is how we safeguard where we work. It says what happens if we lose access to our office space. So typically you see alternate sets of desktop computers, maybe alternate location for people to work, where to meet up at if should a building be evacuated for whatever reason, things like that. They do go hand in hand. You do test them together, but they are both vastly different. The role of auditing. Auditing makes sure our data is accurate and our controls are in place that we have a low probability of something bad happening to privileged health information or financial data or customer data. Typically, bigger companies will have an audit department. Smaller ones like Greystone will have outside, typically accounting firms audit for our various systems. And here's a sample of a list of weaknesses. And should you get a list like this, you build a remediation plan, which says, how do I fix user accounts to missing passwords, or how do I fix network configured to allow sharing? And then when that remediation plan is approved, we have to fix it. And then auditors will come back in and make sure we fix those issues. We talked about identity management software anywhere like Active Directory or Active Directory Reserve for cloud. It's what protects our identity. We keep passwords in there. Tokens and smart cards are pretty much a thing of the past. Biometric authentication is used in fingerprint readers or retinal scanning or facial recognition that iPhone 10 has. Two-factor authentication, many of us use in that we put in a password and then we have another system verify our identity. Now, it really just safeguards what we're doing. I'm a big fan of both biometric and two-factor authentication. Better safe than sorry when we're looking at our assets. A firewall is, we discussed in the class already, they're a way to put out fires, like a firewall in our boiler rooms that stops a fire. A firewall will prevent unauthorized users from accessing our network and protect our employees from going where they're not supposed to go. And we do that through packet filtering. This here is typically how corporate firewall works. If we look at the lower part of the screen, that's our local area network. We have our part of our client server model that's on our part of the firewall. This company has two firewalls, an inner and an outer. The area between the inner and outer is called the demilitarized zone, or DMZ, kind of the same as the area between North and South Korea. That's where our web server sits. It sits there so the public internet can reach our web server. And then there's a connection through the firewall that allows traffic between our systems and that web server. Another use of the firewalls, and you should include this in the exam question as well, is it builds our wide area network. At Greystone, we use firewalls with virtual private network tunnels, much like the Holland Tunnel, a way to connect 2 points. We use VPN tunnels configured in our firewalls to connect our locations. So we build a wide area network through firewalls instead of very expensive network connections. The most important tools we use in safeguarding our systems. First is intrusion detection, and we do that through our firewalls and through our security providers, who more often than not we're going to outsource because we simply can't afford to have those professionals on staff when we're making our backpacks. We want to make our backpacks. We want to design new backpacks. We want to sell and market our backpacks. We don't want to pay a guy to look at screens of hundreds of packets moving through a network. On all of our devices, we're going to have antivirus and anti-spyware software. We're going to check for the instances of malware, and if there is malware, we're going to quarantine it and delete it. But with updated virus definitions, we can prevent viruses from happening. They'll tie into our web browsers and our mail to protect us. Just like the no free lunch rule, we should all have some kind of antivirus, anti-spyware software on our mobile devices and our laptops and desktops. If you don't, please at least get a free one. It'll make things much more secure for you and protect you from harm. The free ones do a good job. Of course, when we start paying for something, it does a much better job. How we secure our wireless networks now. Even 10 years ago, we were leaving our wireless networks without passwords, and people were stealing our networks, stealing our bandwidth, making things slow, putting us at risk. Then WEP security came out. It's a way to encrypt our network to other people. We have to put in a passphrase for it. It's been replaced with the WPA2 specification. These passwords change with longer encryption keys and passcodes. I'm going to show encryption like this instead of looking at the verbiage. How it works is we'll take a real example that I use is sometimes I have to get in touch with Wells Fargo outside of the phone system, and I want to email maybe documents or something. We set up a key network between my banker and myself. So what I do is I, the sender, will encrypt an email or a file with my public key. It's something I buy, usually from a company like Symantec, which sells antivirus software. That key will scramble my message that can't be read by anyone else unless you have the private key that matches the public key. My recipient has the private key. They decrypt the message, read it, send me a response, and they encrypt it with their own public key, and I open it back with my private key. So encryption is a very key thing these days. Like Greystone, I even encrypt our hard drives. So should we lose a drive, no one can use it. And the public key opens the drive for use when we log in. We're going to look at digital certificates now. They're just data files that are stored on a computer that we get from a certificate authority company that stores some information on their server and get replicated to our hard drive. And it kind of looks like this. In the center, we see a digital certificate. We have a serial number, who issued it, the expiration of the issuance, the subject name, the public key, etc. Well, we're doing some kind of purchase on the internet, and we have an online merchant, say PayPal. So we're on the internet, we go to some vendor, and we want to buy the latest Nike shoe, let's say. So we request that, and we get to PayPal, and it's looking for our authentication, but instead of us logging in, it's looking for a certificate. So the request for certificate goes back to us, goes to the internet, goes to the CA authority, it references our certificate, makes sure it's valid, and then sends it off to PayPal. So one less step we take to authenticate and protect our data. Before we look at how we ensure system availability, last night St. John's beat Georgetown in the first round of the Big East tournament, and right now as we're recording this lecture, we're playing Xavier. So just right to me that St. John's is playing Xavier, Xavier, during our lecture, and you'll be good to go for credit for this assignment. So to recap, you'll give me the answer 30 and Xavier. So our transaction systems have to be up. We want them up as close to 100% as we can. 99.9% is realistic. So what do? We make sure we have redundant hardware, 2 power supplies, multiple hard drives, multiple processors, multiple sources of memory to have control over our systems and their availability. As we talked about, we're also going to outsource our security. So we'll pay professionals that will manage this for us. We're going to finish up with looking at security in the cloud. Realize that security in the cloud is really a bi-directional thing between us at Darkroom Backpacks and our cloud provider. If you see my video, you'll see I'm Darkroom Video Guy today. Well, regardless, I booked a room in my office space during lunch, which was not available to me, so I had to find an alternate location. So we keep the same Darkroom platform that you're used to. So we have to know where our data is stored. We have to make sure that they're HIPAA or Sarbanes-Oxley or other requirements met before we can even move to the cloud. We have to make sure our data is separated from other clients on the same servers. Oftentimes we'll buy a private cloud, and we'll maintain service level agreements with our cloud provider saying, you owe us X amount of service, and if we don't get it, we get compensated. Security in the cloud used to be a huge deal 10, 15 years ago. It stopped companies from moving to the cloud. Now things are all segregated with software and hardware firewalls and security professionals looking at things every day that we no longer really worry about the security in the cloud. How do we ensure software quality? Testing. We're testing our application during development, during regular acceptance testing, during user acceptance testing, post-implementation. We're always testing. When we find problems in the process, we debug and retest. Again, we'll see in, I think, Chapter 13, I believe the system development lifecycle, it's 8 steps in building an application, is never really done because we're always trying to fix bugs and make things better. And that's it. Again, I wish you all a great spring break, and we'll talk to you when you get back.